Your ears do not deceive you. You have just entered the Cryptid Creator Corner brought to you by your friends at Comic Book Yeti. So without further ado, let's get on to the interview.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Yeti's Cryptid Creator Corner. I'm still working on a new name because it's a little too alliterative, but this is interview content editor Jimmy Gasparo, and I am here with a very special episode that I'm very excited about. I am here with a writer and a creator whose first series, Agony Acres, came out in 1995. He has also co-created and co-written the series 13 Steps with Kevin Mellon. He has adapted several things for comic books, including Joe DeVito's Kong, King of Skull Island. He has a few current comic books that you should be on the lookout for soon, such as No Other Gods, Monster and Midways, and Bob with Stefano Carticelli. But today we are here to talk about the Kickstarter for Of Bitter Souls, a comic book that was done with artist Norm Breyfogle. I'm here tonight. Please welcome Chuck Satterlee. Chuck, how you doing?
Hey, good, man. Thank you very much for having me today. I really appreciate it. Oh, I do want to say that I think Phil Hester might have co-created and co-written 13 Steps, so I don't want to slide him. If I remember right, I'm an old man, so no, I'm kidding. Phil Hester did co-create and co-write 13 Steps, so
all right.
Well, don't want him to be slighted. He's, I salute Phil Hester. He's one of the greatest men in comics, so I don't want him to be slighted.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. If I misspoke, I don't want to slight
Phil, not at all. Not at all.
In the slightest. So yeah, yes, co-created 13 Steps, Phil Hester involved as well. Sorry, Phil, if you're listening.
We're sorry, Phil.
So well, let's get right into it. I was lucky enough, you sent me volume 1 and 2 of Bitter Souls, and I was kind of fascinated by it in terms of its connection to superhero comic books, its connection to New Orleans. It's, the name in and of itself, which of Bitter Souls, it's mentioned in it, is taken from a quote from Job. I think it's 3:20, if I'm not mistaken. So tell me, what is Of Bitter Souls, and when did you first begin working on it? And then, we'll get into about the Kickstarter and what you're doing with it now.
Okay. So as you mentioned, Agony Acres was a book that we did in 1995. And it got some decent acclaim. And then at one point I was holding an ash can and I gave it to George Perez, who was sitting at a table, and I'm getting into Bitter Souls. This is how it happened.
Sure, but let's hear it.
But George, one of the most beautiful people in the world, looked at it and said, "I'll link your covers so you could say so I could say I'm on the team." And so George Perez inked all of our covers, which gave me, without earning it, the clout to talk to other people. When I was, I was self-publishing a comic book, but I was like, hey, George Perez is our cover inker. And people are like, really? And I got to talk to other people. And that's kind of how it opened the door for me to meet people. I'm not afraid to talk to people. But so anyway, long story short, that led to my favorite Batman artist in the world, to this day, Norm Breyfogle. He was signing some comics at a later show after George was inking our covers. And I went up to Norm and I'm like, man, Norm, you're Norm Breyfogle. I love you. You're the best. Your Batman is amazing. And will you sign my comics? And he did. And I asked him if he'd do a pinup in Agony Acres. And he said yes. And so he did a pinup of his characters in Metaphysique and Agony Acres. They were both a virtual reality comic. And so it worked out. So I ended up knowing Norm and corresponding with him back in the pre-internet world, where we would do this thing where we would take a pen and write on pieces of paper and then put them into envelopes, and then we would use this thing called the post office and then send it. It was called a letter, and but we kept in touch, and we spoke on the phone a lot, and it was for me amazing because he's just fantastic. And so then you remember the Ultimate books from Marvel, Ultimates, Ultimate Spidey, all the Ultimates.
Sure.
I came up with this idea because I love New Orleans, and my wife and I spent a lot of time down there when I was younger, for a job. At one point we were down there for a month, and so just absolutely love New Orleans. And so I thought, it would be cool, Ultimate Doctor Strange, but make him a Haitian voodoo priest who lives in New Orleans, Cajun, and he lives in the Garden District. Because imagine the Sanctum Sanctorum in the Garden District in New Orleans. I've always felt it fits better there than in New York City. But anyway,
you're probably right.
I sent in the pitch, and you're not supposed to do unsolicited pitches, but I didn't know any better, and I got a reply, and it was declined, but it was like, hey, this is a good idea. I can't accept it, blah blah blah. You're not allowed to, but I just want to tell you you're a good writer, and so I was like, well, I still want to do a book in New Orleans, and I still want it to be kind of, supernatural, blah, blah, blah. So it just kind of morphed into Of Bitter Souls. And I started coming up with these characters, and everybody I was thinking up was dealing with, it just morphed into everybody, that all of the characters were really not very nice. They were living kind of pretty rough lives, and then I was giving them powers, well, in the book, that were directly related to their worst character flaws. So if you were an addicted gambler, right, and a con artist, and you could turn back time 13 seconds, boy, you can make some bets. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
Yeah, you roll the dice on the craps table, and it hits hard 8. Then you turn back time 13 seconds and bet it all on hard 8. And so I had kind of a drug addict and gangbanger on the team, and he could shapeshift and become whoever he wants. Now, if you're a drug addict and you need things, you can now shapeshift and get anywhere, go in anywhere you want to. There's a murderous, very violent, hot-tempered police officer from New Orleans Police Department named Winston Fontenot on the team. He's given incredible. Imagine giving a violent, dirty cop, like, not really Superman, but let's say Captain America level strength. You know what I mean? That's right. Pretty, so it started working out to these characters were dealing with gifts, and they were dealing with temptation and stewardship. What do we do with the gifts we're given? Now, at the time I was somewhat religious, but the book is not like steeped in Christianity or anything. If you look at the last fight that Norm drew of the first issue or the first trade paperback, there's a whole lot of non-Christian in there. Yeah. I am not these days very Christian either. It's a long story, and God and I have our discussions.
Okay.
Because there's it's long and complicated. But anyway, it just started working out, and I was really digging where this idea was going. And I didn't have an artist, but I knew that there was this new comic book company starting up. And so I just called Norm out of the blue, and I'm like, "Hey, do you want to do this with me?" And he's like, "Sure." And
Wow.
and I was like, "What?" You know, I seriously, and he goes, "Yeah, man, it's a good idea. Let's do it." And so we did it, and we submitted Of Bitter Souls and another book that was called Smoke and Mirror with another team to Speakeasy, and they took both. And all of a sudden, I mean, at the time I was like, well, of course Speakeasy. I didn't know this at the time, but I look back and I'm like, I submitted with Norm Breyfogle. Of course, a new company is going to take it. You know what I mean? It
Right.
could be the shittiest story on the planet, but Norm Breyfogle at the time gave that small company Speakeasy some credibility. But we worked on it, and Speakeasy went out of business because they took too many books on too fast. And then we moved over to Marcosia, where they did a trade paperback. Then we did another volume, another 3 issues, and another trade paperback. And ultimately, we did 9 issues together, Norm and I. We worked very well together, and we became very close. He was one of my best friends, and it was pretty. It was a pretty special time. We did 198 pages story together.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's beautiful. I mean, it is dark and gritty, but there's so much emotion, and the look of these characters feels so authentic to the story you're telling, which is it's impeccable work by both of you. And yeah, I didn't know what to expect when I was getting into it. It's not overtly religious,
No.
despite the title and the character Pastor Secord. I don't know how it's in print. I don't know how to say it. Secord.
Yeah, Pastor Secord.
I mean, there are certainly elements of it that
Sure.
you can see influences in Christianity or other religions, but it's really about character. It's really about their character. All 4 of the main
It's about
characters.
growth, and it's
Right.
about growth, and it's about using. It doesn't matter where your gifts come from. If there's God or your parents or maybe a coach or wherever maybe you just have innate talent. Whatever your gifts are, are you using them for
Right.
good or not?
Right.
I guess it comes down to what I guess Ben Parker, Peter's
Yeah.
uncle. I mean, I guess this book is a long way of saying with great power comes great responsibility. But I wasn't thinking about it like that. I was just thinking that because Peter was an inherently good person, Peter Parker.
Right.
He was inherently good. All of the characters in Of Bitter Souls are kind of inherently on the wrong. Well, they're not maybe inherently bad, but they're really on the wrong path. It doesn't, and it's not a wrong religious. They're on the wrong path. One's that cop murders someone. Winston Fontenot, George Parker. He's a criminal. There's a con. Salome is a con artist and a grifter and a gambler, and then Jade, she's not really chosen her path, but she's a sex worker in this book, but she's not one by choice. She's a forced human trafficked sex worker.
Right.
And she has an interesting power. She who has been controlled her whole life now has the ability to control minds,
Right.
control other people to do whatever she wants them to do.
Yeah, I think her journey in the book is probably the one that I found most interesting, because I think out of all the other characters, maybe George Parker, is close second, but she has definitely had such a difficult journey, and it would seem to be, given this power, would be very easy to use it in, a kind of a classic supervillain, type of way.
Because she's
Acts of revenge, a Tarantino-esque situation because of what has been done to her, and how she, reacts in volume 1, and in particular in volume 2, even more so. I don't want to, for anyone who might not be familiar with it and wants to pick up the Kickstarter, not to check it out for themselves, but also to have this amazing Norm Breyfogle art and all the other inclusions we'll talk about in a minute. Her journey in the second volume as well was fascinating. What I really liked about it was I felt that you didn't, two things in terms of the writing of it. I really liked the non-linear narrative aspect of it. I liked, the back and forth as we got a little bit more of the story, and then we go back and we see a little bit more of the past to learn who these characters are. And I also liked, in terms of the writing, that I didn't feel like, anything is being spoon fed. I mean, this was written in, I think it came out initially in 05, 06.
06, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been so much done in terms of superheroes, in terms of that genre, and when you read a lot of it, you see the same beats in terms of how somebody got their powers and the origin story and going forward and explaining things. And there were some things that were surprises to the characters themselves. So as I'm reading it, I'm learning something the same time the character is learning it. It wasn't all set up A, B, C, and D. And I felt like that was something that I hadn't really seen before in that, in this type of story. And it was like, oh, look at this. Oh, here's something else that's new, especially with Fontenot, with his power seems to develop as the story goes, that he has to uncover it in a very interesting way. And I really enjoyed that about the story. Did you
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Another thing is that New Orleans really does feel like a character in this. You mentioned it, but I was going to ask, like, did you spend a lot of time in there? This didn't feel like you had gotten a book about tourist destinations in New Orleans. It felt like you had actually lived and spent some time there and understood a little bit about what the city was like during the time that you're writing this.
Yeah, I did. It was pre-Katrina, but one of the jobs I had back in the day was, I've been in insurance for a long time, but one of the day jobs I had back in the day when I was younger was I had a security, like a low voltage wiring business. We called it Wired for Sound. We did alarm systems and things like that, and I was the sales guy for it, and then my partner was the install guy. And through that, I met the manufacturers of I'll try to get straight through this fast. Manufacturers of a Korean digital video recording system that at that time was revolutionary, because it could tell if there was pixels that were moving, and so you could go straight to the time when the pixels moved in a camera thing. So you could go, you didn't even have to fast forward. You could just click in 2006, click, or 2005 at the time, bam, you could go right to where there was something going on. And so I did a show for this company. It was called Kodacom. I did a show for this company, at a restaurant show down there, and someone stole something in my row the night before, and I had my camera running for my security system that I was trying to sell to restaurants. You know what I mean? And so we caught. I was able to show how the security system worked, and caught the security. Actually, it was a security guard who stole this stereo, and I was able to to show. So this guy this person who runs this cash register company down there, he came up to me and goes, "Hey, here's huge. I mean, like huge, fat, really cool old man." And he comes up, he goes, "Young pup, y'all gonna come down here and stay down here for about until we sell this little system you got here to every restaurant in the quarter," you know. And he kept calling me young pup. And so I had to call my wife, and I'm like, this guy wants me to stay down here. And so I told him, like, my wife, I got a wife, I got a little boy. And he goes, "Bring them on down. You know, we put you in an apartment, young pup." And so he put me in an apartment, and my wife and I got to be down there with my son. He was so little at the time, and I got to go into the back of all the famous restaurants, Napoleon House, all these places. I got to see all the background, and because of all that, I started to learn the myths and the legends of the ghosts and the hauntings and all these kind of places. And so I during that time, I just soaked it all in, and I was like, I'm writing a story, you know, at some point I'm doing that. Right. And you know, and somehow I'm going to figure out how to put this all together. And that's how my love of Nolans happened. I was down there long enough to know that everything is Coke. You could have an orange. You can have an orange soda. That's an orange Coke. You see, you can have Dr. Pepper Coke. You can have orange Coke. We have grape Coke, but it's all Coke. You know, and the other thing you do is you don't go grocery shopping or buy groceries in Nolans. You go make groceries. Go make groceries now. I'm going to go make some groceries. You know, and you go. That means you're going to the grocery store. You know,
you're going to make groceries.
You're going to go make groceries.
I've never heard that. That's wild.
And so, you know, I just immersed in it, and you know, and so that's how my love of Nolans right. came out. And you know, I'm probably the only Chicagoan who could spell Tchoupitoulas without, you know, making an error.
Well, yeah, some of the legends or some of the ghost stories that, like, the four characters, once the team comes together, that they go to investigate, it has kind of that, like a TV show, Supernatural or X-Files, like that mystery of the week, you know, and seated in the bigger arc of you know, of the team, which was pretty interesting, you know, in terms of how it got into it. And I did wonder, like, how much of that was just invented whole cloth, or how much of that were bits and pieces of other legends. I do want to say that in the second volume, and I think it's like one of the last stories, I feel like the Grunch kind of got short shrift in the naming department. Like,
it's the name. Every single myth and legend that is in Of Bitter Souls is, I mean, I don't want to say true. It's an actual New Orleans based myth or legend or ghost story. Right. You know, the Turkish Sultan, you know, the vampire, you know, the famous Axeman of New Orleans. That's a very famous story, you know.
Yeah.
Even the BuzzFeed guy, I love that show, Unsolved. The BuzzFeed dudes, they're hilarious, and I wish they wouldn't have quit. But they did the Supernatural and the True Crime BuzzFeed Unsolved shows, and they did the Axeman on that show years later. But I loved watching. I'm like, yeah, I wrote a comic about that, you know.
Oh man, I didn't know that. I'll have to check that out. I'll have to try and track it down.
Yeah, it's on Hulu right now.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I love all those little bits of things, and wondering, like, oh, what is taken from reality? What is, you know, what did you add in to, you know, have it suit the comic book itself? But I wanted to ask, in terms of, we talked a little bit about, it's not, there's some religious aspects to it, but not, you know, overtly religious. You know, anybody can get into this, and it's really about character, I think. But in terms of the name, you know, the Of Bitter Souls, and that quote, like Job 3:20, like, of all the things that you could have come up with the name? Who came up with that, and why did that speak to you to say, oh, I'm going to name this is what I'm going to name this comic book? Or if you came up with it with Norm, however that worked.
Well, I came up with it. Before Of Bitter Souls came out, I attended a Lutheran church, and in fact, my son's godfather is the pastor of was the pastor of that church, and now he's the pastor of a Lutheran college in Valparaiso, Indiana. His name is Jim Wetstein. The church was a Lutheran church. It was very small, and they couldn't afford to they couldn't afford to give Jim raises. So in lieu of raises, they gave him more vacation time. But we were a small church back then. Again, Lutheran, and so they couldn't afford, if Jim was gone, we couldn't really afford a guest pastor. So hi. So Jim would kind of set me up, and I would go give a sermon, and so I kind of I read the whole Bible. I don't care if you're religious or not. It's good storytelling in there. It's great if you're a writer, and quite frankly, if you're a comic book writer and you haven't read the entire Bible, you should. And I'm not talking about to convert. Hell no. Just to let you know where I'm at right now. Fuck no. Yeah. No, not for. I mean, if it's a good thing for you, great. Whatever. But it's just read it, man. It's a great place for inspiration. Not even for that kind of. I'm talking about storytelling inspiration.
Storytelling. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, my own journey with religion. I mean, I was raised Catholic. I say raised Catholic. That's so you can tell a Catholic is no longer a practicing Catholic if they start out by saying they were raised Catholic, not I am Catholic. But I went to Catholic grade school, high school. I mean, I even went to a Catholic college. But now I'm not really under the umbrella of any religion in particular.
Yeah, me neither.
But I mean, I certainly have a bunch of family members who still are, and I don't begrudge them that. At whatever works.
I don't have. I think Christianity is good. I think that Christianity, though, like a lot of different religions, has been absolutely turned upside down, and I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are, you talk about what does the right talk about? They say fake news. Well, fake Christians, if you're not full of love, empathy, compassion, forgiveness, I'm wondering what fucking Bible you read, because that's all the J-Man was about. That was his whole deal, right? I'm not here to proselytize, because again, I'm not even religious anymore. All I'm saying is, in the Bible, Jesus loves, empathizes, forgives, all that. And now you've got, I don't want to say words, or I don't want to get political, but I'm just saying, now you got a lot of people out there that are pretending they're standing behind Jesus, going, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And they have nothing to fucking do with religion. They're about the money, they're about the power, and they're about hate. So,
right.
Which, there's a part in the Bible where where Jesus flips some tables because he's fucking pissed, right? Because they're a bunch of fake motherfuckers. Am I allowed to cuss on this show, right?
Sure. I mean, I think so.
Yeah,
if you were coming on here to talk about an all ages or middle grade book, I'd probably say maybe dial it back like 40%, Chuck. But I think we're okay.
These dummy heads, anyway.
Yeah.
So the title came from Job. Job was tested, quite horribly, and
Yeah.
and it basically, the question is, essentially, why are the bitter of soul given so many shots? And essentially, what I mean?
Right.
Why are why is there so many stories about this guy who blew off dad, came back, and prodigal son? All these different stories about people who keep getting chances, right? And so that's why it shows up bitter souls, because all these people were given yet another chance, and see how they do with it. So.
Right. Yeah, no. Okay. I appreciate that. I do. I think it makes sense, within the context of it. And I always find that stuff fascinating in terms of, naming things, at all the different options. But it's an interesting quote in terms of, because it's somewhat of a complicated scenario. Job kind of lamenting, like, why do these people who don't seem to enjoy life or have bitterness in their heart, why are they giving these chances? And I guess ultimately it's not really Job's question to ask, right? They are, and they got to see what they do with it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about in terms of
that's actually a really good way to look at it. It is not his question to ask. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about in terms of the Kickstarter and what it is. Anyone who's, the campaign launches, it hasn't launched yet, launches soon, right?
No, we're in pre-launch phase right now. People can sign up to be a pre-launch follower, which would be amazing, because we're at 122 pre-launch followers right now, which I think is pretty good for a larger ticket item like this. But it launches April 11th, and this is the collection of everything. So I think to talk about the Kickstarter, you also have to talk about the fact that I thought about doing it because I'd stepped away from comics for a long time. Norm, the comic book industry was robbed of Norm before Norm died. Norm had a stroke a few years before he died. He died in 2018. The stroke affected the left side of his body, and he was a left-handed artist.
Mm-hmm.
So he couldn't draw anymore. So we were robbed of Norm years before he died, but then we were robbed of him, of his grace and just greatness and friendship and everything in 2018 when he died of a heart attack. So the way Norm and I worked back when we did the book was we did work for hire. I kept the ownership, and then we paid him a page rate, but we became great friends doing it. But I own a Bitter Souls, right? And so I just started thinking, man, I have all this stuff, and it was a small press book, and it was 15 years ago, and it was Norm doing amazing work. I have these hundreds of sketches, and I have 200 pages of story that he wrote, and he's not here anymore, so what do I do with this? And I had not even heard of Kickstarter, to be honest, because I stepped completely away from comics to build an insurance business. And so the only crowdfunding I knew was GoFundMe for people who don't get life insurance. Buy life insurance anyway. But the bottom line is that someone told me, hey, you should put this all together. People would want this. Norm isn't around anymore. You should put this together and offer it to people. And I'm like, how do I do that? And they're like, Kickstarter. And I was like, I got to learn this. And that's what happened. So now it's going to be a 400-page hardcover, absolute DC Absolute oversized size book with a slip case. It's going to have a slip case. It's going to have a sewn-in ribbon bookmark. And a fellow named Hector Negrete is he's a designer and a letterer, but he's he's designing the book and doing the kind of the art direction for the omnibus. My friend Monique Redmond is helping me edit and putting it all together. And then we're taking all 200 pages or 998 pages of the story complete. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not like we leave you on a cliffhanger. And then all of his sketches, all of them, for every character, all the cover designs, every layout page that I have, all of it is in this book. All of his covers, everything. Every script I wrote is in the book.
Oh, wow.
And all of the articles that were written about Of Bitter Souls, including like our TV deal that we almost had for a weekend. There's 33 guest pinups. And here's where I got really lucky. In 2005 or 6, who knew that Ryan Stegman existed? Were Marcosia Comics and Harry Marcos and me, and we did Lexian Chronicles together, which you've never heard of.
Right.
That's when I met Ryan Stegman, and he did a pinup for Of Bitter Souls back then. And
oh, wow.
And quite frankly, I care because I think Ryan Stegman is amazing. I thought he was amazing in 2005, but nobody else really cared. But he did it for me, right?
Right.
And we put it in the comic. Inaki Miranda.
Oh,
We Live. Inaki Miranda, right?
Oh, We Live is fantastic.
Yeah, Eisner, dude. He nobody knew who Inaki and his brother and Eva Dela Cruz, the wonderful colorists, who they were back then. Yet he did a piece for me back then because we worked on Lexian Chronicles together. Brendan Deneen, who now owns Scout, or now I don't know if he owns, but now runs Scout Comics.
Scout.
Right?
Yeah.
He did a book back then called Scatterbrain, and you know who his artist was? 19-year-old, never heard of him, Shimon Kudransky. And he ended up doing Spawn, and he's working with Steve Niles right now at Image. Now he's not 19-year-old kid Shimon Kudransky, he's Shimon Kudransky. You know what I'm saying? And and he did a piece back then for
right.
Freddie Williams. Nobody knew who Freddie Williams III was back then. He did a piece for Of Bitter Souls. But now this omnibus has these pieces from these industry giants. But I got them when they were at my level, which, by the way, I've never became the industry giant. I went to insurance, but they all went to be industry giants, and now I have all the pinups, in pieces. Dick Giordano, who was already big, he was just Norm's friend. He's in there too.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mike Oming has got a piece in there, but he was already pretty big at the time. He's amazing. He's one of my favorite people in the world. But he did a piece for it. So it's Oming, Miranda, Giordano, Stegman, all of these guys, they have their pieces in the book. So it's not just Norm, it's that. And then on top of that, Mark Wade wrote a forward, and that's going to be it's not the actual forward for the omnibus, but we're including what he wrote in the book. Brian Augustine did a short story called in the Of Bitter Souls universe about Pastor Secord, and God bless him, he just died, and rest in peace, Brian. I love you. He was a mentor, but Brian Augustine has a short story in the book. And then afterward, I reached out to Alan Grant, who worked on Batman forever with Norm. And I said what I was doing. And he already knew of Bitter Souls, and he knew of me. Norm had talked to him about me, which, by the way, was an amazing honor. And so Alan agreed to write the forward for, in honor of his friend Norm, So this book is it's 400 pages and jam-packed.
Yeah, I mean, and even going through you were kind enough, as I mentioned earlier, to send me volume 1 and 2 of the trades that were published by Marcosia. And just the stuff that's in here and the pinups that are in the volume 1 are phenomenal. I really loved the short stories, the 1 or 2 page stories, and I'm flipping through it now. That's why I'm looking down. But I really loved those, and they'll all be in there as well. You said, right? Everything.
Oh yeah, the Iron Gate by Brian Augustine, and then Andrew Foley. Andrew Foley has a big claim to fame, other than the fact that he and Fred Van Lent wrote everybody's favorite Cowboys and Aliens. I think if Andrew ever heard this, he'd punch me in the face right now for even mentioning that he wrote it. But anyway, my point is that he wrote a book, or wrote a story called Whatever Possessed Her in this book. He actually wrote a book at Marcosia called Done to Death, and it was one of the first ever times that this one artist you may have heard of, Marcosia, man, they gave some starts. Fiona Staples.
Oh, I might have heard of Fiona Staples.
Yeah, she was the artist on Done to Death. Andrew Foley got her on board, and you just looked at her work in 2005 and 6, and you're like, well, this woman is going to go through the roof. She's going to be an amazing star. So yeah, so there are 2 short stories, a few different short stories in here. Learn one thing every day. The reason why I included short stories is because I'm a writer, and you always have pinups, right?
Right.
You have people that do variant covers and all this kind of stuff. What you never get is guest writers. And so I asked people that I respected to do a short story, and I called it a writer's pinup. Right.
That's great. No, I really like them. They all fit in. It's just a little bit of something, extra to kind of build out this world that you and Norm with his, artwork created.
Yep.
I wanted to ask, because I was just thinking about this. I'm not a big, I love reading comics. I love talking to people about comics, and now interviewing creators about comics. I'm not a big, comic collector. But I do have one issue of Detective Comics that I believe Norm had done the cover for. I think it was my favorite is, I want to say it's 610, and it's a cover of, I think, Batman standing in a cemetery, and all the gravestones are the names of others who have worked on.
That's the iconic. That's one. Yeah, the iconic. Or it's one of them. That's the Penguin. Isn't that the Penguin grave?
I believe it is. But
and Breyfogle and O'Neill and all them Grant, they're all on the tombstones.
Did you ever have working with someone like that? Did you have like a favorite in terms of something he did in the comic, like a page that you got back and you're like, oh wow, that he just nailed exactly what it was I was trying to do, or that he elevated, like when that art started coming in? Because here you are, and
nobody.
And no, you said it. But you got Norm to work on this, and then as those pages start coming, I've written like 2 or 3 short stories, and like when you see that art come in, and it's just like, oh wow, this is it. This is the thing. So when you're writing something like this and you have like the pages start coming in from Norm, was there anything that just really, knocked you back?
I wrote in issue 1, I don't know what page it is. It's in the beginning. In issue 1, I wrote this scene where this tourist in a graveyard drops a camera, and I had this idea, and I wrote it into the script for the next panel to be shown from the camera lens upside down. And
I know the panel you mean. Yeah, okay.
And I was just having a hard time writing it, and so the conversation that led up to the page, I was talking to Norm. I'm like, I'm not really sure how to put this in. He goes, here's a thought. write it all the way you want it, and then say, draw this upside down. And I was like, all right, I don't know how you're gonna pull this off, Norm. And he sends me the page back, and it, to be honest, I don't know if I've seen that many panels that are from that angle told with that visual storytelling tool of a camera. And the way he did it, it was just like, oh my God, I'm working with like a Hall of Fame. You know what it was like? It was like if you were at a Division III or NAIA college football team last year, right?
Right.
And you got drafted by the Buccaneers, and now you're with Brady. Like you have no business being there. You're an NAIA college football player. You went to a high school with 80 people. You accidentally got, somehow, whatever happened, you did a little hard work, yes, but what are you doing with Tom Brady? You know, get out of here, you know? And that's when I saw those pages come in, and it was just like, holy crap. Wow. You know, so that, and then some of the thing about Norm is that like his motion and his fights were, yes, they were amazing. But you know what was even more amazing is the fact that his talking heads were interesting and still exciting. He could write an exciting conversation between two people.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely.
He could draw.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
There's a scene, or not a scene, but there's a Batman cover. I don't remember which one, probably Detective, but where Batman is in his lab holding up a sign, like a slide, and it's like, that's exciting because it's Norm, though he drew it, you know.
Right.
A lot of there's a million other artists who I don't think could pull off a guy holding a scientific tool and put it on the cover of a comic, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Something you mentioned about one of the things that's going to be included about there was a possible TV show that lasted a weekend. What was that about?
So my agent at the time, the founder of First Comics, Ken Levin, First Comics actually gave Norm his start on Whisper, and they had Ostrander and Truman on Grimjack and Grell on Sable. Anyway, Ken and Mike Gold started First Comics. Ken went on to be an entertainment lawyer and an agent, and I met him through some folks, and he was he also, like Norm and every other, George Perez and every other guy I accidentally backed into, and they worked with me, took mercy on me and took my books and repped them. Ken brought it to a company called Kickstart. Kickstart liked it. They optioned it, and they all went to Showtime, and they did it. They sold it. It was a deal. I got a call. I was told that the name was going to be not Of Bitter Souls, but The Bitter Souls. It was going to be filmed in New Orleans, and it was going to happen. And I was like, holy shit, my life is going to change, you know? And
Right.
I was excited. I told my wife, I was such an idiot. I damn near bought a car. I'm not kidding you. I swear to God, I damn near bought a car. Did not, thank goodness. But anyway, the Kickstart production guy and the Showtime guy, the legend has it, they went out to play golf on Sunday. They got in a pretty heated argument, and Monday, Project Bitter Souls dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's Hollywood. That's how it works. I've been in 3 or 4 option talks, 2 sales. We optioned 13 Steps to Sony Pictures Television a number of years ago. Then we had 13 Steps in another option just a few months ago, and that don't know where that is, but it's with a pretty well-known comic book creator who now has a production company too. They were the ones that were optioning it, but I don't know where that is right now. So wow. Hollywood is Hollywood is a fickle monster. You can knock on that door, and then they open it like, hey, yeah, hold on 1 second. Then they close the door and they forget you're there. And you're like waiting there. Hey, he told me to wait here. I guess I'll wait here.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
then they're gone. So
yeah, that's a foreign, world to me in terms of, getting beyond the comic book stage to things being optioned and how
dude, me too,
that all
brother.
works is a big mystery.
Me too, man. Every minute of every conversation about any television show that was based on something that I wrote or co-created or co-wrote or created, I've never been in part of. I only hear everything as secondhand because those are people that know what they're doing. So they go in the room. You can't. There's a reason why you have a real estate agent sell your house. Because someone walks in and says, "Hey, your house is shitty," and you're not going to just sit there. You're going to be like, "Screw you, get out of my house. I love this house," even though you're selling it. You take it personally. Well, that's like try to say something about a creator's story. That's their baby. So I've never been in a Hollywood meeting ever, nor have I been invited, and rightfully so.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I understand with certain things. I mean, in my day job, I'm an attorney, so I certainly know that. I just don't know that business side of it. But yeah, I certainly know that aspect of, with personal injury work or criminal defense, especially, which I used to do. You when you understand that world, somebody's like, I'll just represent myself, and it's like, oh, maybe
bad idea.
But I've certainly I do. I wanted to ask because I do a fair bit of insurance defense work now, and I know you're in the insurance industry when you're not writing comic books. And I saw on, I guess, the website for Defective Comics, there was a mention of the claims adjuster. So can you just tell me a little bit about Defective Comics? And I know it's not a publisher. It's I think you're billed as a group of like-minded comic nerds working together.
Yeah, we're just a loose knit group of people that it's just, what it is, it's a sandbox where a bunch of friends are playing, and that's Defective Comics. We've got a bunch of projects we're doing together. My friend and co-writer on Monsters and Midways, Nick Goodwin, and I thought it up, and now the artists that we're working with are in our sandbox too. And so the claims adjuster, it was thought up originally. The seed of the idea was thought up by the artist of No Other Gods, Neil Van Antwerpen. Again, another guy I met at Marcosia. Neil was like, what's with all the damage to buildings and stuff? Who pays for that? And what about a claims adjuster, blah blah blah, or an insurance adjuster? Anyway, long story short, it turned into a story about a serial killer. But no other. Excuse me. The claims adjuster is Leonard Skolnick, and Leonard has been a claims adjuster at LRW Insurance, which is actually the insurance company I work at. I work at a company called LR Windsor, but LRW Insurance Superhero Battle Damage Division. And so now think of like the movie Man of Steel, right? Where Superman and Zod are literally just knocking the shit out of Metropolis, and also that world engine. And who pays for that? Right. So I came up with this insurance company that has the right actuary tables, and they can write the business. So they do. And Leonard is their top insurance adjuster who goes out and checks the claims after battle damage for their clients and everything. And everybody loves Leonard. He's the nicest guy at work. He takes care of his clients. He calls them back, gives them great service. What nobody knows is that 16 years ago, Leonard was in the park, like that city's Central Park or Brent Park, and his little toddler son wanted some ice cream, and so he goes and he gets some ice cream. What the world doesn't know, what he doesn't tell anybody, is that as he went to get the ice cream, he hears this crash, and this bus just out of the sky landed on his family. Their collateral damage of a superhero battle between our comic books, Lex Luthor and Superman, and they're just collateral damage. Sorry, it happens. I mean, how many people do you think died in that Metropolis movie, or in Man of Steel movie in Metropolis, right? There had to be thousands that died in there, right? Thousands,
sure.
And so Leonard, for the last 15 years, has been collecting data after superhero battles, checking video, doing the hard, and he's meticulous. And he's had a plan. And his plan is he's going to kill every superhero in Megalopolis City and every supervillain, because he's figured out who they are and what their secret identities are and what their weaknesses are. And he's gonna exact revenge. Now, all of that I can tell you. What I can't tell you is the last guy he goes up against, it turns out to go real bad. It goes south for, and the story, hopefully if we do our job right, at the end, the reader's like, what the fuck? That's the hope. So Neil and I are doing the story. I'm doing the script, and this incredible artist named Laura Helsby. They live in Manchester, and they're a big funny thing. They're a big Chicago Bulls fan, and they like the Cubs, and they're just a Chicago sports fan. The only thing that Laura and I don't get along on or don't agree on is I'm Arsenal Gunners, and they're not. So they're Manchester. So but we get along with everything, and it's great. Laura's like in their like mid-20s. I'm in my early 50s, but we have the same music taste. We're pals. I call myself their comic book dad.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's a heck of an origin story. The claims adjuster. I mean, that's just a great origin story in terms of supervillains or heroes. It's just that there's been similar, things percolating over the years. Sure. I mean, NBC did a kind of a comedy TV show about who deals with the damage of, afterwards, and there was something else. But that idea that somebody is doing that, using that job to collect data and to try and take out the superhero and supervillain community. I really like that. I really like that idea. That's great.
Leonard does not see these people as collateral damage. He's been these people. He is those people, and he wants it to stop. So he doesn't. He's very analytical. It doesn't matter if they're a good guy or they're a bad guy. They are causing the damage.
Right. I like that. Well, I can't wait. I'll keep an eye out for the claims adjuster. And then well, I mentioned it earlier, but just what can you tell me about the other two series that we mentioned, No Other Gods and Monster and Midways? Okay.
Well, so No Other Gods, I'm going to try hard. All the people I work with and my wife, and if anybody sees this, my son, I'm going to try hard not to get political. So No Other Gods is a cautionary tale of tyranny and fascism, set in a world 16 years into the reign of America's first dictator. Superheroes exist. This dictator has has let a bunch of super villains out as long as they work for him. He rebrands them. He he calls himself Chancellor, and he has these super villains working for him because to him there's good people on both sides. Sorry, I let it out. I didn't mean to do that. This Chancellor took over because he thought the elections were rigged, and he used to be a poor businessman in my comic. I'm not making any statements here.
Nothing. It's nothing. So you've just you've adapted. It could happen here.
Yes.
There's
yes.
no connection to reality, right, Chuck?
No. Any similarity persons alive or dead is purely coincidental. But anyway, so anyway, the bottom line is the heroes have been in hiding for 16 years because they've been overrun by the villains who've all been let out of jail now and are rebranded by this TV spokesperson. The Chancellor used to be a TV guy too, by the way. I don't know if
okay.
I made this completely up, and
all right.
and so he rebrands them. He gives them different identities, and the heroes are overrun, and they're in hiding. So of course, there's only 6 stories out there. It's just the way you tell them. So the young guy, powerful, the bad guys are looking for him, the good guys are looking for him. There's a bunch of really great characters in there, and it's truly about it's a red flag, and if you read it, it's a fun superhero story, but it's about how it's basically the tyrant's playbook. Every single tyrant, and I won't even talk about our own America right now. I'm talking about Idi Amin, Hitler, Milosevic, Mussolini. They all have the same plays. They all do exactly the same thing. And so No Other Gods is about being on the guard for tyranny, against tyranny. I mean, not for tyranny,
Right.
And so that's what No Other Gods is. It's drawn by my good friend Neil Van Antwerpen. He's South African, wonderful dude. And then Monsters and Midways. Monsters and Midways is also coming out this year. It's a 6-issue series, and I'll get to the artist in a minute. He's special. Not that Laura and Neil aren't, but if you're in comic books, even if you're not in comics anymore, but you've made one comic book in your life, you have a neighbor, friend, relative, somebody who is going to come up to you, and this is going to happen to you at least 10 times a year, where they say, what would make a good comic? And then you start telling their idea, and you get so good at it after you hear it enough times. I'm not trying to be a dick about this. I'm just saying, that the idea is probably going to not be very good, but you care and like this person. So you get into your, maybe so, that's interesting. And you get out of the room, right? And so my neighbor and my friend Nick comes up to me and he's like, what would make a good comic? And I was like, oh shit, and he started talking, and we were having beers. He's a beer connoisseur. He's one of my best friends. And he started talking, and I was like, well, shit, you're right. This will make a good comic. It's not a bad idea, And so we worked the story together, and Nick is he has a wit about him. He could be a stand-up comedian tomorrow if he wanted to be. He's also a smart dude, and he's going to write a lot of comics at some point, even though he's starting late in life. So that's Nick. But the artist, Jeremy Meggert, is man. I feel like I don't know. He's going places fast. I think he's become a really good friend. He's a wonderful artist. And Monsters and Midways, the story in general is 1976 Chicago. A heavy metal guitarist hasn't gotten very far in his painted van with a wizard on the side, doing songs about elves and dark magic. It's not working for him. So let's see how he does with the real thing. He ends up finding out he's a latent barbarian with magic skills, and this wizard named Kessler, based on a real guy from a bar called the Liars Club in Chicago. They team. They Their job is to work with another person on their team to stop this evil wizard from releasing dark magic and mixing it, because it's 1976, with nuclear energy to absolutely F everything up, and this book doesn't really have a statement. This book doesn't really have, I'm not trying to say anything politically or spiritually. This is just a bunch of barbarians and wizards fighting each other in a really cool setting, 1976 Chicago, with some fun storytelling. Jeremy Megger is the king of Easter eggs. This is just fun. I'm having a blast with it.
That sounds awesome. I love that. I love the idea, the genre mixing. I love when writers and artists can do that, really well. Take something that's typical fantasy and bring it into, the modern world, or at least the modern world for that the time, 1976 Chicago. And what a fun setting though, for right now to see. I feel like the 70s is having a bit of and maybe in other things, but in comics in particular, like setting things in the 70s seems to be like right now. It's like a really fun time. There's a lot of parallels, I think, between right now and like the early 1970s as well, for a number of reasons. But
sure, yeah,
that's a fantastic setting. 1976 Chicago. I like everything about that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Nick's telling me that story. I'm like, well, damn, this is good. This is really interesting. Right. And so we decided to make it together. But yeah, it's just fun. There's no statements being made other than magic is cool, metal rocks, and I like to wear big bracelets.
Okay.
Big leather bracelets.
Right.
Rock. Yeah.
Nice. So what other thing, other than comic books and other than your work in insurance, what other things are you into? Like, what stuff do you like in terms of music or comedy, movies? What kind of stuff do you enjoy?
I'm grunge to the core. So, when Chris Cornell died, I think I felt like my mother did when Elvis died. I was just like, oh shit. That one hit me. So grunge to the core, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Screaming Trees, all of it, Soul Asylum, all of it, Mudhoney. Anyway, so that's my favorite music of all time, but I also dig Motown, and my son has gotten me into rap pretty hard. I'm not, I won't turn down a J. Cole song. Juice World, all that, I dig it. And there's actually a rap album for No Other Gods coming along with the book by Relic the Bully, a Chicago rapper. And
wow.
So all of that's going on. I also enjoy video games. I'm part of a, you appreciate this because you're an insurance guy or an insurance attorney. I'm in a clan in Destiny on Xbox with two patent attorneys, a nationwide insurance vice president, and myself and Jeremy, the artist of Monsters and Midways. Also, we have an arc welder. But my point is, we're all older, and so like whenever we do PvP, and you're against kids or something, and maybe they're a whole team, but they do not. Yeah, they're faster. Yeah, they have better eyesight. Okay, all of that, fine and dandy. You know what they don't do? Communicate, plan, strategize. We smoke those fools. So
that's hilarious.
And then and then just movies and stuff like that. So
yeah. One of the things I've been asking a lot of creators, just because it's something I'm curious about, especially ones that I think have seem to have a good sense of humor or work in comedy, into some of their stories. I'm always interested in what are your influences, comedically, like because I feel like even with darker stories or stories where you're trying to say something, there seems to be an underpinning of some type of humor, or some type of something that isn't just all dark. So like, where does your sense of humor come from, and like what makes you laugh now?
So it's really timely that you said this, because I finished one of the scripts for Monsters and Midways this weekend, and I wrote, because Jeremy loves to do Easter eggs, or maybe I think he loves to do Easter eggs and he's just lying to me, but I wrote one of my comedy inspirations into in an Easter egg. So Cheech and Chong, they, to me, oh my God, they were the shit back in the day. And Dr. Demento, have you ever heard
Oh,
of Dr.
wow.
Demento?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard? Okay. So the
Yeah.
Dr. Demento radio hour, that stuff was hilarious, and so I actually did a take on Dave's Not Here in Monsters and Midways.
That's so funny.
Our barbarian's name is Dave, and I had him knocking on the door of Dave's, or I had him out of his apartment, and I had our wizard Kessler looking for him, and he's knocking on the door, and he's like, Dave.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, are you kidding? Did I just accidentally write into the? And I'm like, so it's a really super serious moment, because Dave's hurt and Gary's looking for him, right?
Right.
And but in the middle of this really serious moment, he's not, Dave. All of a sudden you hear it's an apartment hallway, and so the door behind Kessler the wizard opens, and it's Cheech and Chong there, and the wizard turns around in the heated moment. He turns around and he goes, and they go, you looking for Dave? And the wizard goes, yeah. And they go, Dave's not here. They close the door. So yeah,
that's great.
That stuff made me crack up when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then finally, what makes me laugh now, you have to be really careful these days about what you say makes you laugh, but there are certain things that still make me laugh. Well, a lot of old stuff, but these days, what makes me laugh a lot is the Saturday Night Live Weekend Report with Colin Jost and Michael Che. I think they're perfect. I think they're hilarious.
Yeah. I like the two of them together too. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a wonderful balance of a little racial tension, but good, and they have wonderful timing and delivery, and I'm pretty sure they write their own stuff, so they're perfect. They're amazing.
Yeah, they do a great job. Colin Jost's book I read, or actually listened to the audio book, A Very Punchable Face, I thought was very funny.
I'll have to check it out, because I didn't even know he wrote one. So, and I think he's hilarious.
Yeah,
it's Scarlett Johansson had the best Super Bowl commercial, period.
Yeah, I did enjoy theirs.
Yeah, that was funny. So,
I was going to say, one of my first jobs ever was in high school. I think my freshman year of high school, I worked after school as a janitor at my grade school. And, we'd clean the classrooms, mop the floors, do all those types of things. And our boss, who was the head janitor, but also was the accountant for the school and one of the math teachers, had a box of cassettes, and he'd let us listen to like his cassettes while we cleaned. And one of them was Cheech and Chong.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That I still remember where I was. I think I was cleaning the, single-use cafeteria, gymnasium, auditorium. And when I first heard the Dave's Not Here bit, it's probably probably was 14 years old, and it was the first time I heard it, and I was like, "This is hilarious! This is the best thing ever!"
Oh my gosh! Basketball Jones. You ever hear that one?
Yeah.
Basketball Jones. I think that's Cheech and Chong. But anyway, yeah, they were amazing.
Right.
They were absolutely awesome, and they they were funny. They didn't
Yeah.
have to say anything, you know. So and they were a counterculture comedy too, you know.
Oh, sure.
At the time, all their shit was about I don't think they'd even be that funny today because weed's legal almost everywhere. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that
So
was a
their
big part of it.
countercultural comedy probably wouldn't even take that well these days. But back then, man, hilarious.
Yeah, I always think about the things that like you found funny when you were younger and like how they influenced you, things like Cheech and Chong and how they still, or whatever it might be, Dr. Demento, you mentioned how they still work themselves in. That same age when I was probably 13 or 14 was the first time I listened to all of, and I within months had memorized. My dad had Steve Martin's an album of Wild and Crazy Guy, and we had an old record player in our basement and a pool table. And my most of my high school years were spent just listening to get to like the Steve Martin records and shooting pool.
Oh yeah,
and for the longest time, I had that memorized.
I smuggled Eddie Murphy cassettes into the house because he was raunchy as hell, and I remembered all of it.
Right.
Like the talking car. Like in a white neighborhood, the talking car says, "Your lights are on," and in a black neighborhood, the talking car says, "Yo, motherfucker, you left your lights on." That was Eddie Murphy, and that's me at 13 listening to that, and I was like, he's hilarious. But I had to put my Walkman headphones on and just, because man, I couldn't get caught with it,
Oh yeah. I don't think my parents knew like some of the stuff we were listening to, and like now it's like, oh well, that's not that bad. It was like Steve Martin, but it sticks with you. Like there were non sequiturs that he had in that Wild and Crazy Guy album, and I'll still say it. I just turned last week, 43, and I will be somewhere and just be, like, Grandpa bought a rubber, and it's just and nobody gets it. Nope, just me. But I know it. I'm 43 years old, and I'll just be somewhere and be like, Grandpa bought a, and it's great.
Yeah,
it makes me laugh.
And if people only know Steve Martin today for Only Murders in the Building, that's fine too. But man, he was insane back then.
Yeah, I love that stuff. All right. I don't want to. We'll start reminiscing, and we'll be talking all night about comic books and comedy and whatever else comes along. But all right, Chuck, I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me. I think this has been fantastic. I hope everyone checks out the Kickstarter for Of Bitter Souls when it launches on April 11th. It sounds like it's going to be a great 400-page hardcover collection. But I'll, let you have the last word about Of Bitter Souls or whatever else you want to tell the folks that have still listening.
If you have to still here, I just want to first of all thank you. I continue to be the guy who backs up and trips into everything. I'm the Forrest Gump of comic books right now, and so thank you and Matt at Comic Book Yeti for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm very humbled. This is my second time around in comics, so anytime anybody ever pays any attention, I know how lucky I am. So thank you, and thank you for listening. I hope you'll check it out.
Yeah, I hope they do too. I'm really looking forward to it. I just really, really enjoyed volume 1 and 2, and Norm Breyfogle's art. It's just extraordinary in a comic like this. And I really hope people take a look at it, pay attention to it, whether or not they're brand new to the story or longtime fans, that they, get to revisit something and kind of get lost in it. It's really a great story. It's an interesting story. It's gorgeous artwork. And so April 11th, everybody check it out. And I'm Jimmy Gasparo for Comic Book Yeti. Good night. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner. We also have a podcast of the same name that you can download wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Cryptid Creator Corner, maybe you would enjoy our sister podcast, Into the Comics Cave. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.